I survived everything overseas. The part that almost broke me was coming home. I was 46 when I stepped off that plane for the last time. Infantry, multiple deployments, years of operating in environments where tension never really disappeared. Dust in the air, radios cracking at odd hours, sleep that never went too deep. Coming home was supposed to feel like relief. My wife was there, my 2 kids, smiles, signs, arms around my neck. Everyone said, "You're finally safe." But something in me didn't turn off. The first night back, the house felt too quiet. No generators humming, no distant movement. Just the refrigerator cycling on and off, the air conditioner kicking in. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. In deployment, silence meant something. It meant pay attention. It meant something was about to happen. At home, silence was just silence. But my body didn't know that. I got up twice that night to check the doors, not because I thought someone was coming, because it felt wrong not to. That was the first sign. The second was smaller. At dinner a few days later, my son dropped his fork. It clattered on the tile, a sharp metallic sound. Before I even thought about it, my body reacted. I snapped my head toward the sound. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Careful. It wasn't yelling, it wasn't anger, but it wasn't softness either. He froze for a second, just a second, but I saw it. That hesitation, that moment where he didn't recognize the version of me sitting across from him. Overseas, that sharpness kept people alert. It kept them alive. At home, it created distance. I didn't notice it right away, not consciously. I thought I was doing well. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't isolating. I showed up to school events. I fixed things around the house. On paper, I was present. But presence isn't just physical. My wife saw it before I did. "You're here," she said one night, "but you're not here." I didn't understand what she meant. I was sitting right next to her, but my mind was always scanning, assessing, planning, even in small moments, even during quiet conversations. In the military, you're trained to anticipate worst-case scenarios, to think 3 steps ahead, to stay emotionally level no matter what happens. That discipline becomes automatic. The problem is, home isn't a battlefield. My daughter asked me one afternoon, "Dad, why don't you laugh like you used to?" I didn't have an answer. I wasn't unhappy. I wasn't angry. I just wasn't relaxed. And that's when it started to sink in. The habits that made me strong overseas were the same ones creating a wall at home. Emotional control, situational awareness, detachment from comfort. In combat zones, those traits are survival tools. In a living room, they can feel like coldness. There was a moment that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. My wife and I were arguing about something small. I don't even remember what it was. Probably scheduling or finances. Normal life friction. She stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "I don't need a commander," she said. "I need my husband." That hit harder than anything I experienced overseas, because I realized she was right. I was still operating like every situation required control, structure, emotional containment. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't explosive. I was distant, controlled to the point of isolation. The military taught me to suppress reactions, to push discomfort aside, to carry stress without showing it. But intimacy requires something different. It requires vulnerability. And vulnerability felt unfamiliar. On deployment, showing too much emotion can shake confidence. At home, hiding it can erode connection. That shift was harder than any terrain I'd navigated. The battlefield had rules. Home didn't. Overseas, I knew who I was. I had rank, responsibility, a clear mission. At home, the mission wasn't survival. It was relationship. And that required something I hadn't trained for. Softness, patience, listening without planning the next response. I had to learn how to let my guard down in places that were actually safe. That's not something they teach you in the military. No one briefs you on how to transition from hyper-alertness to calm. You're trained to endure, not to unwind. The hardest part wasn't coming home physically. It was recalibrating internally, admitting that strength in one environment doesn't automatically translate to another. I had to confront something uncomfortable. I wasn't broken, but I wasn't fully present either. And presence is what my family needed. Not perfection, not command, not discipline. Presence. I started small. When my kids talked, I stopped scanning my phone. I looked at them fully. When my wife spoke, I listened without correcting. When I felt the urge to control every detail, I asked myself, is this about safety or about habit? Over time, something softened. Not weakness, just awareness. I realized mental toughness isn't about staying hard in every environment. It's about knowing when to lower the armor. At 48 now, I can say this honestly. The battlefield tested my courage. Home tested my humanity. It's easy to be strong when the rules are clear and the threat is obvious. It's harder to be open when there's no threat at all. If you've ever come back from something intense, not just war, but any season of survival, you know this feeling. You built habits to get through it. But at some point, you have to decide which habits still serve you and which ones are keeping people at a distance. Coming home didn't break me, but it forced me to confront who I had become. And that confrontation required more courage than I expected. Because sometimes the hardest transition isn't from civilian to soldier. It's from soldier back to human.